All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, the first interview of 2024, kicking off a brand new year. And what a great way to kick it off. I've been wanting to have Robert Sweet from Striper on for quite some time. I see him on the road all the time. And I've had all the other current members of the band Striper on the show. Links to those interviews are in the description. So I feel like Robert is a little bit of a recluse. He doesn't do a million of these things. Even though we live in the same state, we don't see each other. He's not the type of guy you're going to see going out to every event. He respects his private life. And if he's not working, maybe it's better to not hang out all the time. So I'm glad he's here today, and I think this is going to be a great interview to kick off the year. Robert Sweet from Striper, right after this.
Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody I'd rather waste time with than you.
All right, please welcome Robert Sweet.
Hello, buddy. Jason, thank you so much for today. I do want to tell everyone I'm not a recluse, but I think I fell into the habit of going out on the road, being gone for 3, 4 months at a time, and then find myself when I come home, I just want to hang out with my wife and kids and my pets. And of course, I go to places all over Vegas, but I'm just not much of a guy to be hanging down at the strip.
Yeah, I think the only time I saw you out in Vegas when you weren't working was seeing your brother play, Michael play at a club called Pinky's. This has got to be 20 years ago. Uh, other than that, when I see you, it'll be a Striper
Oh,
concert.
wow. That was a while ago.
Yeah, so
Yes,
but
yes, I remember that.
yeah, but I'm glad you're here now.
I want
And
thank you.
go ahead, Robert.
I wanted to say, I hope it's not breaking up here. It seems like we're getting a little interference. But man, you are such an inspiration to me. I got to let everybody know you work with Stephen Piercy. We've got to do a few shows together. And last time I saw you, I believe, what was it, 6 months ago when Striper played here in Vegas?
Canter,
And every time I see you with that smile on your face, dude, it's like a rock and roll Adderall or something. Immediately I get that punch of energy, man, just gets me going, man. Your smile, you got this vibe about you. So, man, I really appreciate that about you.
Well, that's nice of you to say, Robert. I remember the first time you said it, we were on the road somewhere in Texas. And I remember
Yes.
saying to Lisa, Michael's wife, who works with the organization, boy, I wonder if Robert gets bored because you do sit what would be considered sideways to most people, and you're looking in the other direction. And I said, I wonder if he just ever gets tired of looking at stage hands and walls. And that night you told me that it helped to see, like I was sort of cheering and enjoying it, sort of helped to get through it because yeah, you are looking away.
Well, I did start sitting sideways all the way back in '79 at Gazzari's in Hollywood. And that's when I first met Steven. And I did it to be different. But, sometimes, even though I'm always turning to the left and I've kind of messed my neck up from doing it, you do want to see people cheering you on. So it's always nice to see someone, and I always do. There's always people, no matter where we play, that I find that are in front of me over to, the side of the stage watching. But most of the time I try to keep things moving so much, try to fling myself around as much as I can and get into it that, I'm going to say probably 60, 70% of the time, I don't even know what's going on. But it is nice to look out and see someone standing over where I can see them.
Yeah, it's we're going to talk about a bunch of things, Robert. One, you guys are getting ready to go on your first that I know, acoustic tour, which is going to be called To Hell with the. Also, the record, The Final Battle, is still available. I told Michael he probably should have saved that name for the end, but because I don't think this is the final battle. But we'll ask you about the future of Striper in a little bit. But before we get to those things, and you can go to striper.com for all the information. But before we get to those things, I want to go back. Is it true that you took a trip to Vegas with the family, I guess, 1975 and you saw a drummer here and a drum kit that sort of inspired you?
Yes, but I think it was even before 1975. I'm going to
Okay.
say it was probably 1970, and I saw a blue sparkle drum set. I can't remember where it was, and I was just enamored with that thing. And it's like I was already playing drums at that point, but it just kept pushing me. I have no idea why I wanted to play drums. I just did. It's like I always tell people I didn't go after drumming, it came after me because I really wanted to be a guitar player. I'm a closet guitar player. I've always, I don't know, just had this thing for guitars, and I got to get myself an Ace Frehley Les Paul. That's one guitar I've always wanted that I've never seemed to get my hands on. But um, around 1970, when I was like 10 years old, I saw that blue drum set, and it really kind of brought it alive in me. So yes, that is true.
Was your brother Michael with you at the time?
No, he wasn't. I had come out with my grandparents, who used to come to Vegas a lot. Little did I know at that point in time that I'd be living out here now. So it's
It's funny.
I guess all those times were warming me up to be here.
Yeah, it's funny how it worked that way. So you're a self-taught drummer. I will tell you, I see people all the time who are inspired by you, influenced. You have a lot of fans in the music business who enjoy seeing you play, and like I said, we're inspired. So how did you get started?
Well, thank you for that, bro. I kind of, I don't know. I just sat down one day and I started playing. And, when I bring home my report cards, the teachers would, be asking my parents to tell me to not play drums on the desk. And I wasn't even realizing I was doing it. I always used to get headaches from playing drums with my teeth. My jaw would be killing me, and I still do it today. And my wife laughs at me and goes, "Yeah, I can hear your teeth hitting." So I think it's just something in me. I don't really know. I never had any lessons, and one of the things that really hit me when I was really as a teenager, coming into it, is I wanted to be different. I always saw drummers that, I wasn't really, oh, how can I say it? I wasn't really that thrilled to watch them play. And I always said to myself, your playing's got to be number one. The way you sound and the way you play has to be number one. But I've always wanted to at least try my best to entertain on the drum set. I wanted people to go, man, I don't know if I remember his name, but that guy behind the yellow and black drum set, the way he was playing, I'll never forget it. And so from that point on, I kind of put myself on cruise control. It's not something I really don't think about. I mean, I've always, loved drummers, say like John Bonham or Buddy Rich, or, so many, Tony Royster Jr., so many great drummers. But when I was growing up, I didn't have the internet. I just had records to put on, and I finally got to meet one of my drum idols, Tommy Aldrich. Recently, I got to fly up to Seattle and do an in-store with him, and what an honor and pleasure that was. But I didn't have any of that growing up, so there were no lessons for me. No one said this is how you do it. I just kind of figured it out, and really, that was the same with my brother Michael and with Oz Fox, who is the friend I've had for the longest point in time now, who's our guitar player. So I didn't know what I was doing. I just went ahead and did it anyways.
We're looking at the young Sweet Brothers here on the screen.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you had these photos.
Yeah, this is a old family photo of you guys. Now you are the older brother of the two, and so I'm sure your musical influence that you're bringing things home first, right?
Yes.
And Michael's following suit. At what age does Michael start to play guitar?
Mike and I both started really young. The first time I remember seeing Michael with an acoustic guitar was about 1969. So I was 9 and he would have been 6. He's 3 years younger than me. We have a sister in between us. And, our whole family was musical. I mean, all my aunts, uncles, my mom, dad, my grandparents, my sister is an incredible singer. So, we grew up around music, and it was always kind of really encouraged in our family to go for it, to do it. And, if you go back in time, back 30, 40 years, I think music was much more of a big deal than it is now, which is so heartbreaking for me because it was such an incredible thing, such an inspiration. I mean, I couldn't wait to go to concerts. Michael and I, our first concert together was seeing Elvis Presley at the Forum in
Wow,
1974. I
amazing.
was 14 and he was, yeah, 11. And so that's, of course, talk about life-changing events. That was one that kind of, again, helped put us on the road to what we do today.
That's incredible. Yeah, you'll hear people talk about their first concerts. You hear Kiss and things like that a lot. Elvis at the Forum, a big one.
Yes, it is. And I did get to see Kiss. I'm a huge Kiss fan. And a big heartbreak of mine was that we never got to go out and open for Kiss. Now, we did, last year get to do the Kiss cruise. And, we played at a huge festival down in Mexico last year with hundreds of thousands of people. And we played on the day when Kiss played. So that was an honor. We got to open for them in 2018 in Spain. And at that point, I had no idea they'd be able to stay on tour for 5.5 years. I mean, these guys are the kings of touring, but they
Mhm.
were a huge influence to me. And every time I've got to speak with Paul or Gene, those guys have been so nice. What a gentleman Paul Stanley is. All the guys in the band have been wonderful. The new guys and the old guys. I got to meet, Eric Carr before he passed away. What an amazing guy. Uh, the new guys that finished up with him, they're wonderful. But they were a big deal for me. And I remember in 1975, I couldn't, wait to run home from, being a freshman in high school. And as my whole family was away, have my drum set up at the den, turn on Kiss on my parents' stereo and just slam away.
Mm. Yeah, something was your family. Obviously, it's no secret in your faith and the Striper. You guys are a Christian rock band. I think you're more of a rock band that happens to be Christian as well. But was the family? Were you raised with Christianity?
Well, I always kind of had something in me. I feel that was pushing me towards helping make Striper what it is. I've always, through my experiences in life, I always felt, no, wait a minute, there really is a God. And as I got into Striper, wow, I was really confronted with, okay, this is really real. I know it's real, but I'm getting to see how real it is. So my family accepted Jesus in 1975. And, we started going to church, but I always felt there was something pushing me in a different way. Um, it was always hard for me to think of Stryper being a Christian band. And that was, well, when we started Stryper, full fledged, man, I wanted Stryper to be what it is. I was hardcore on that. No, we're going to do lyrics that speak about Jesus. We've got to do what we can. But at the same time, I did not like the idea of being, you know, sold only in the Christian section, say of Walmart or Target or certain places, only have our records there, because Stryper was always the band that wanted to go play the clubs and play the arenas because we're a full-fledged rock and roll band.
Mhm.
And so we kind of did the impossible. I mean, it's very tough if you think about it to be full on rock and roll and yet at the same time be full on Jesus. I mean, those are two things that, 99% of the time they don't go together. And,
Mhm.
as the Bible says, with God, all things are possible. So it worked. It's still working. I'm glad for that. And I want it to touch people. But for me, I feel like so many people, especially in the 80s, got the wrong idea. And there were all these rumors and ridiculous things said about the band. And I think in one sense, it scared off a lot of bands that loved us musically, that wanted to take us out on the road with them. But, you know, they got the wrong idea about the Christian thing. And that saddens me, because really, we're an easy band to get along with. We're not there to make trouble. We're responsible. I feel we have a good work ethic, and what we want to do the best we can while meaning what we say. But I do think it held us back, and we were forced to headline. We had no choice. And back in the day when we were playing Hollywood, back in starting in '79, when I first met Stephen, we weren't Stryper yet. We were on our way. I had turned my drums sideways. 1980, the yellow and black stripes started showing up. The groundwork was being laid. We went through a lot of different guitar players and bass players, and come 1983, okay, we made the decision. Stryper was there, and the rest is history. But it always made me feel kind of sad that people had the wrong idea. So, the last couple years, I've seen that kind of going away, where other bands have went, I like these guys. They're okay. Yeah, let's have them play with this. And I've had a lot of people walk up to me and say, I got the wrong idea about you guys so many years ago. But you know what? You guys are great guys, man. It's great to get to play with you. So that's really exciting for me. But I was never, the Christian rock band thing, it's a sword that cuts both ways. We don't deny Christ in any way, shape, or form. We're 1,000% for it. But I just hated that 80s thing back then, with many of the TV preachers. Most of them really hated Stryper and really slammed us to the ground.
Well, Robert, it's interesting. It's interesting you bring that up, because 75 is the year you said that your family sort of gets more involved in Christianity and devotes your life to Christ. That's also the year that, from what I understand, that you were watching Jimmy Swaggert on television, and he was sort of a bit of an influence. And it turns out Jimmy Swaggert wasn't the biggest Stryper fan.
Oh, you are so right. 1975 was the year. And I remember telling my family, you guys, we need to get closer to Jesus. And, they're having these big things. At the time, I saw Jimmy Swaggart on TV, and I didn't really know a lot about him, but I kind of encouraged my family, no, let's all go. Come on, we need to do this as inspiration to help us, kind of become the Christians we should be. So we went, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 times to see him. And it just crushed me years later to see him rip us to shreds. Yeah. Watch on television him hold up the "In God We Trust" record and go, see, these guys are nothing about money. And it broke my heart.
About money, right?
I mean, we all need money, right? Without it, you die. But at this point, this was a man who was getting hundreds of millions of dollars, and, wasn't faithful to his wife, and, wasn't kind of telling the truth. I'm not trying to put him down. It crushed me, that thing where you hear that if you meet your heroes and they don't turn out to be what you were hoping they would be, it crushes you. Well, not that he was a hero, but to watch him denigrate Stryper, never talking to us, never sitting down and speaking with us. But that whole 80s thing, along with Tough Love, that whole thing of, unless you're wearing a cross and carrying a Bible, and if your hair is long and you play rock music, you're not a Christian. All that stuff is just foolishness. It really
Yeah,
is. And
I think Jesus would argue with the long hair part, but
well, of course
yes.
he would. And, you know, Jesus was the first one who did things in the non-religious way at that um, time that he walked the earth. We got 3.5 years of looking into a man's life who wanted to do things differently. He wasn't only a man, he was the son of God, but he fulfilled the old way, but he brought in something new. And that's really what Stryper wants to do. We've always wanted to do that. And we've wanted, even though we are not perfect, no one is, we've wanted to leave a lasting impact, you know, in this world, especially in the world of rock and roll, which, you know, in many ways, rock and roll really is the devil's business. You know, there's a lot of great things there. It's a lot, man, what an honor it is to get to play in a band where you have success. And someone once told me that if you succeed musically as a singer or a solo artist or a band, you're in less than 1% of people who succeed. So what an honor, right? I mean, but there is a lot of underhanded things in the industry. And I feel so bad because musicians are the people that are stolen from. You know, the industry has stolen from so many artists in the past. And you don't see that in sports, say. You know, sign the contract now, we'll give you an $800,000 signing bonus and buy you a Porsche. That really doesn't happen a lot, you know, in the music industry. It does sometimes, but it really is the devil's business. And we loved it. We loved music. We looked at it as a gift from God, but something that had kind of been twisted. And we wanted to leave our mark. So I hope that we have.
Well, I think so for sure. I remember growing up, many people who were just rock fans, not necessarily Christian. I mean, obviously there was a Christian audience, but I remember going to Disney World and everybody going to see Stryper play at Disney World. It was sort of a big event. And so Stryper reached all types of people and crossed over, being on MTV, having hit videos. But you started in the same clubs as Motley Crue, Wasp,
Yep.
bands that were the polar opposite of Stryper, and you guys fought your way through from Rock's regime, the early years, to Stryper. You guys fought through it, and you stuck to your message when a lot of people thought maybe you should give up on the Christian thing or throwing the Bibles out and maybe just fit in, conform, so to speak. And that's not something you did. Here we are 40 years later. You've stuck to what's built Stryper, and it obviously seems to work.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, we have tried our best. You know, that thin, narrow road that leads to, you know, heaven is a tough one to be on sometimes. But I feel if you surrender yourself, which we really did. I mean, you know, we were kids when we signed that first record deal. I was 23, my brother was 20, Timmy was 21, Oz was 22. And, you know, most people at that point are kind of green and you don't know what you're doing. You know, you're taking a leap of faith and you find so many things out later on, you know. But we just had this drive. We felt so excited and so like this is definitely the right thing to do. And I always tell people, I'm not trying to insult myself, but I was kind of naive, not stupid, but I was just very trusting of people. And you know, I had things happen to me where I look back at myself and I said, yeah, I shouldn't have been so trusting. But I think sometimes when God wants to use you in a way that's something different, you almost have to be naive. So you're so trusting of him, you know, because this world beats you up and, you know, you become jaded after a while and you go, oh man, I just can't do it. But when you're young and you have this excitement and at least for me, being trusting and naive, it helped me, I feel, to jump in full-fledged.
Yeah, it sure seems that way. Couple questions, and then we'll get to the present. The yellow and black. Uh, a lot of that you painted the original. Did you? The guitars and things. You had a lot to do with that design, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I mean, I was a maniac. My wife reminds me of it all the time. My wife first met me when she was 14 and I was 22. I had no idea who she was, and her friend wanted to take drum lessons from me. So, she used to go around telling her friends all the time, one day I'm going to marry Robert Sweet. Well, it happened. There you go for being positive and, saying, voicing out things, I believe, But back then, when she met me, that would have been 1982. I was striping everything up, and all the way from the guitars to the amps to the guitar chords to the drums to the studio we had at that point. And I've never really, I don't really wear yellow clothing. I'm not that big of yellow, a fan of yellow clothes, but I just thought the yellow and black together, it looked really cool, and everybody remembered it. And in the early days, I remember people saying, I don't remember the name of that band, but it was the guys with the yellow and black stripes. And man, I just went, yes, that's it. That's what you want. Whatever your thing is, you want people to remember. And, again, that doesn't take a priority over your music, but whatever you can do to be different and to kind of make a shock out of the box, make a statement that people don't forget, man, that's all a plus. So I always thought it looked cool together, and that was something we were doing before Stryper, and it carried through. Big, man, was it something else? A real popular thing. So many people got into it. I mean, I can't tell you how many painted Stryper cars I've seen, and people painting their faces up and having the outfits made and showing up at our shows. And so I guess it was an idea that in one sense it worked.
It did. Well, we're talking about it 40 years later. How did you go about
Yes.
painting it? Did you use tape? What was the strategy for painting the guitars and the drums?
Well, we didn't have a lot of money. So most of the time I taped up all the guitars. I would go buy yellow and black, kind of tape you can get down at, say, Home Depot. And I'd do all the guitars, and then Mike and Oz got into it. And back in the early days, and I still cringe when I see some of the early photos from 84, 85, we would go buy black and yellow striped clothing and dip it in yellow dye, because you couldn't find black and yellow stuff back then. There was no Amazon. And again, we didn't have a lot of funds, to go out and have this stuff made that was really cool. That came about in 86, when we were able to get the custom made clothing on To Hell with the Devil record. That's when things started, really becoming a little more pro. But yeah, most of the guitars and mic stands and all that were done with tape. We used to make the dummy cabinets. I along with Oz and Mike and Tim, we probably at one point built 100 dummy cabinets.
Wow.
And we'd show up at Gazzari's, and the last time we played Gazzari's, Bill Gazzari told me, "Hey, Rob, look, all the great bands, I've had to boot them out of here, and then they became famous. I'm really sorry. I love you, but man, you guys are too big. The other bands here are complaining. You bring in too much gear." And we'd have probably 30 guitar cabinets going into a place like Gazzari's, and we just painted it by hand. But everyone thought we had money when we didn't. You gotta make it look big before you are big.
Yeah, you
So
fake it till you make it, as they say.
that's right, brother. That's right. That's something I understood as a teenager, that you got to do the best you can do um, until it changes. So yeah, all that stuff was done by hand, as best as we could do. But I tell you, once the stage lit up and you saw those stripes, it looked really kind of cool.
Hmm. For sure. Again, we're talking about it. People remember it. It takes them back to a place in time. So, being in a band can be a challenge. Sometimes they say it's like being married, and 40 years, it's 40 years plus. Well, your brother is in the band. So I have always wondered, is it more difficult having family in the band?
The only thing that was difficult for me was when we started, we were so young. Michael was 3 years younger than me. So, when I was 16, he was 13. And at that point, that's kind of a big difference, you know? But once I was like 20 and he was 17, well, that wasn't so bad. And, my brother's always been a little more mature than his age. And, he always looked a little bit older. And when we were playing the clubs back then, I think he had a fake ID,
Mhm.
or, he just wouldn't mention anything. And, we were really drawing crowds, so there were no complaints. But, there's always an issue with whoever you work with. Look at how many bands don't work with family, and it's a disaster, even though there's great success. But I almost think family is a plus, because that's one more thing you have to lean on and say to yourself, before there was music, we were brothers. Before we had anything, before there were any wives or girlfriends, before there was any music, there was us. And that's a real plus in my book. That's how I feel. So I'm really honored, that I've got to do this with my brother. And look at how many bands where you've seen two brothers, Van Halen or Pantera, and the list is long, that where there's been so much success. And I think a lot of our style musically comes from the fact that it used to be just my brother and I, me playing drums and him playing guitar. And a lot of the way I accent my playing went along with rhythm guitar playing, versus a lot of drummers I've heard who accent with the bass player. Now I do both, but I really do realize, once, say, we're on stage somewhere and Mike and I start sound checking, that vibe from all the way back in the 70s kicks in, and how we just naturally accent one another.
Yeah. And so you've had a long career together, as addition to being family. But in 1990, you guys made a record called "Against the Law," and it was a little bit controversial. There are still some fans who love that record. Michael is not the biggest fan of that record. A few years later, he would leave the band. I've always wanted
Yes.
to ask you about the decision, because you continued and Oz continued, and I believe Tim as well, without your brother. What was that like at the time?
Well, it was hard for me to accept, I'll be honest. You know, as the saying goes, you don't know the good thing until you lose it. Well, I had worked with my brother for so long that, of course, it's going to be heartbreaking. And when we did the Against the Law record, our label at that point was beginning to say, look, we need something different from you guys. And the other guys don't really know, but man, I was getting calls all the time from the guys at Enigma who brought in new people. Rob, we got to do this differently. And when you're in it at the moment, you don't always see exactly. But looking back on it, I think musically, great record, production, awesome. But I wish we hadn't have given in to the pressure of so many people at Enigma at that time, demanding. No, you guys have got to do some songs where the lyrics are a little different, or the looks a little different. I mean, I was really getting screamed at, not from Wes or Bill Hine, who owned the company, but from other people below them. There was really a lot of pressure to do a different record. And we did, and I think it's a good record, but I think if we redid it again, we would put our foot down a little bit more. You know, it would probably still sound musically the same. Tom Wehrman was awesome. He produced the record. We probably still work with him. He's amazing. But you know, I don't think we would have gone so much in the direction, because there were so many people waiting to attack us, waiting to say, see, I told you so. That, man, anything we did, if we did a cover, oh, see, I told you those guys didn't mean what they said. It was a weird time, man. So, but I do agree. And I know my brother, you know, he doesn't much care for the record because of some of the lyrics on it and some of the things at the time that, you know, happened. But, you know, everyone goes through life and does their thing, and you don't really know what it's got to turn out to be until you do it. So looking back on it, I do wish we would have, you know, not given into so many of the pressures. But Michael did leave in 1992. What most people don't know, my brother has always had it in his blood to do solo records. I remember him talking about that in 1985. And at first it kind of hurt my feelings because, you know, at 25 years old, I'm thinking, man, success is happening, bro. Everything we've hoped and prayed and for and dreamed of is coming true. And I remember him telling me how he'd like to do a solo record. And, you know, I got to give props to Michael. You know, there were people who wanted him to leave Stryper and do a solo record, thinking that he would have more success, but he didn't do that. So, you know, we carried on from 83 to 92, but at that point, I really think my brother needed to do something different. He really wanted to explore things a little differently and do it on his own. You know, and really that's quite common with a lot of singers. I mean, look at what happened in Pantera. You know, you kind of saw the same thing with the singer wanting to go do other projects with other bands. And, you know, when that happened, I didn't really understand it at the moment. But now I look back at it, I see, okay, some great things came out of that. My brother got to sing for Boston. I see how God used that time to help me connect with my wife and have my family, which of course I love and I'm so proud of. I'm so ecstatic to have 4 kids and 3 grandchildren. I love it. And everybody thought I was the guy that would never get married. You know,
Right.
the guys all got married early on, but I was the one guy that didn't. You know, I got married at, you know, I met my wife when I was 35 and she was 27. So, marriage for me came later. But I see how when the band broke up, how God took some of the things that maybe were meant for bad and turned them into things that were good.
Yeah.
And still the seed of Stryper was still there, you know. And in 2000 we started doing shows together, and you know, I always wanted Stryper to be back together, but I didn't think it would happen. My brother was very, very busy with his musical journey. Oz was doing his thing, Tim was doing his thing, and all of a sudden one day, you know, we get the calls and there's a Stryper Expo, and then we go down to Costa Rica and we play in a sold out arena. And I can see how I feel God was putting that, okay, guys, get this back together. So the seeds were laid for that. It took a couple more years, but along comes, you know, 2003, and we're back in the studio making things happen. And, you know, a week from now, I leave to go do another Stryper record.
Yep. And
we have put out a lot of material, brother. I can't remember exactly how many albums we done. I want to say 17, I think. I
You
think
you
that's
you
it.
you cranked them out. I've told your brother he sure can write a good Striper song. He has the ability to keep writing. I think the quality of the records is there. The final battle being the most recent. Again, you mentioned you're going to play to record a new album. I wonder, just rewinding for a second before that reunion, though, when you guys had an obligation to play some shows overseas when your brother left, and you guys went and tried to do it. But did it put a strain on you and your brother's relationship?
Um, no, I mean, we had hoped that Michael could come with us, and we only did one show. It was a big festival,
Mhm.
and we were wanting Michael to come along, but I think he had something at that point with his voice or something, and he couldn't. And we went over and did a show with Oz singing and Timmy and I. But we pulled it off. It's not right without Michael.
Sure.
Striper isn't Striper without Michael. Of course not. And my brother is a songwriting machine. I mean, I saw that when he was a little kid. I watched him being given this gift before anyone else knew about it. He was always, always, I was, but it was different because I'm a drummer. So it's a little different, but I was the same way, but he was different with songwriting, man. He just constantly had the ideas coming. He's still that way today. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how he does what he does. He just lives for that. It's really, I do too, but after a while I said to myself, man, I need a break. I got to go do something else different. And he's just constantly putting out music and material and doing side projects. I do too, but he just lives for that. So he really loves it. I do
Yeah.
too. It's just a little different for him.
Yeah, I don't think he can sit still too long. I think he's always got something else. Let's promote the final battle right here. This is available everywhere you find music, downloads. Another quality Striper album, another great reception. I like that you guys keep going. People like these records, so there'll be another one. And when is the next record tentatively supposed to come out?
Well, I actually don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, since you're
I
recording.
guess paperwork was just signed. We're with Frontiers over in Italy. So sometimes, there's a delay until I hear what's happening. All I know at this point is we are going into record starting on the 16th. We're going to go lock ourselves away in this beautiful place in Massachusetts, and we stay there. Wake up, there's a chef. It's our hotel, beautiful home. We walk to the studio and record, come back, have dinner, crash, wake up, do it all again the next day. But I the final battle I think is a great record. I really do. I think it's got some really great tunes on it, and the vibe is really fantastic. And I'm hoping, we hope this with every record, but I'm really hoping this time we could even kick it up another notch. Try to find that special vibe of the moment that you can put in to the songs. And so, I don't know when the new record will be released. I'm not sure on that. But we'll see. The minute we know, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
I'm not sure yet.
it's coming. Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
coming. It wasn't the final battle. There's going to be a lot more Striper. If you go to striper.com, you can check out the tour dates. You're going in between the recording, and as you talked about your process, you guys have really figured out a good way to get together, be away from distractions, and make records. So, but in between doing that, you're also about to go on the road again, and people can take a look at those tour dates. I want to talk a little bit about this because, to my knowledge, it's the first time you guys have done an acoustic tour. This is To Hell with the Amps, and I'm looking at the dates right now on the screen.
Yes.
Is this
Well,
something that you're looking forward to?
well, actually, we've done it before, but
Okay.
probably not to this extent. We have, I'm going to say maybe 20, 30 times gone out and done shows where it was like Unplugged on MTV. They were acoustic shows, and I really had a fun time doing it. I mean, I didn't have to come off stage with my hair knotted and my clothes ripped and stuck to my body from sweat, exhausted with my fingers bleeding. It's actually kind of a nice thing, but it's still fun. So I really do like it. And I think a lot of people, when they hear that right off the bat, they go, no, man, I want to see Stryper in the way that I've seen him in their videos or seen him in the past. But it's a new thing. I mean, not a new thing, but it's something that I think when fans see it, they go, wow, I really like it. I'm really surprised, only because I've heard this said before.
Sure,
And
that's right.
I still play a little tiny drum set. And
Do you play it
so
sideways?
well, I have before, but
Okay.
the drum set's so small, sometimes I just turn around and face straight ahead because
They can
I'm
see
not
you.
doing a lot of, bashing cymbals behind me and all that kind of thing. But it really is a lot of fun. And we've had a lot of people say, wow, I was really surprised. I didn't think I'd like it. But I came and I realized, wow, this is great. This is seeing another side of the band I never got to see. So hopefully you can see us on one of those shows. That
Yes,
would be an inspiration. Yes.
I would love it. And I think you're right. You guys have not stopped since you got back together. You play a lot. And so people have seen the live show. This isn't the end. There'll be an electric tour. You still do electric dates. There'll be electric at the end of the year. And so for those fans, especially Stryper has a lot of diehard fans, want to hear the songs played differently, have a little bit of a more of an intimate night too.
Yes.
This is a great way to do that. Stryper.com for those tour dates. Robert, I'm so glad that we were able to do this. We've been talking about it for a while. And as I said, you don't do a ton of these. You value your private time. And so I'm so glad that you were here. I see people interview Stryper, and many times I feel like they're just looking for a clickbait, a headline. They get your brother a lot. They try to rope him in. And if you're
Yes.
interviewing someone in Stryper, you know about your faith and you know what you guys believe. And so sometimes these people can't have a conversation without trying to get some controversial headline. Who's fighting with who, and who's. And I like that. That's not something that you fall for. And I'm glad that we were able to have a good chat about your history, your career, and the future of your career.
Well, thank you, buddy. And I want to thank you. And again, I want to bring up Stephen Piercy's name. You being with him and me getting to meet you through doing shows with Stephen. Like I said, we go back to 1979, 1980. And at one point, I was asked if I'd like to be the drummer for Rat.
That's
And that
right.
was in 1984. And would I have ever loved that? What an absolute compliment. Oh my God. I mean, it still tears at me, and I really believe if I would have been the drummer in Rat, they might not have gone through some of the troubles that they've gone through. I love all the guys in Rat. I think they're great, but I feel like Steven and I were always able to get along at a really cool level. And he, watching him play in Mickey Rat before it was Rat was a real inspiration for me. And I would have loved that, bro. But I told him I can't leave my brother. We're getting close, or we might have inked the deal at that moment. I can't quite remember, but it was such an honor for him to ask me that, and if there would have been no Stryper, I would have done it just like that, man.
I've joked with your brother that there would have been a much nicer Bobby in Rat had you taken the gig. But
Yeah, and Steven is the only person who calls me Bobby. The only one. Everyone else calls me Robert, but from day one, he always called me Bobby. And I just find that amazing. I really do. He's the only person. And it makes me sad because he brought up a song he would love me to get to play with him. I'm hoping I still get to do it. But between my schedule and his schedule, we were just never able to line up. But I hope that happens. So, Stephen, if you're hearing me, brother, just know I would love that. It's kind of like bringing back that vibe of me getting to play on, you know, in Rat without it being Rat. And
Yeah, I
I've
think it'd be
always,
a lot of fun.
oh, dude, it would be awesome. And I love Steven. I love the music and all the people he surrounded us with. That's where I got to meet you. And I think you're an incredible guy, man. I love you and I appreciate this interview. And I just want all of you who get to see this, just know that there is a higher power, and that higher power is love. And I love you. All of you who've been there for the band, those of you who haven't been there for the band, Stryper loves you. We care about you. Our hope is to somehow touch people and make their life better without it being a religious experience. I've never been, not putting that down, but I'm not so much into the experience of religion. But let me tell you, when it comes to Jesus Christ, I'm 1,000% there for that experience. And it's something that people have gotten wrong. Most people hear that and they shirk away. And I get it. I really do. But it's not what you're thinking. You know, it's not
Yeah.
like, okay, here's a list of all the don'ts. No, there's a list of one do, and that's put your faith in him, and things begin to change. You're not so much in the driver's seat, but this beautiful Holy Spirit is driving you to be the best you can be in your life. So I just want everyone to know that, and what an honor it is, man, to be your friend and to know you. And I thank you for those times where you really did inspire me. I got to be honest about it. You're so tall, so I get to see your face. You always had a smile on your face, always. So thank
Right.
you again, brother, for your inspiration. And thank you for this interview today.
Thank you, Robert. Very kind of you to say. And I look forward to seeing you on the road this year. Everyone go to stryper.com, take a look, and then you'll come back and we'll talk about new music when that time comes too. Thank you, Robert.
Very good, brother. God bless. I'll see you soon. Okay, we'll hang out more, all right?
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone watching. I appreciate it. Like, comment, and subscribe.